right now.
All right.
Hello and welcome inside NFL Team Breakdowns. We'll go ahead. Hello and welcome inside. Sorry for for some of the difficulties here, but I want to bring you inside the National Sports Studios and Robert Dieter's a 10-6 season for Philadelphia. Obviously, far short of expectations in the playoffs, but they do indeed get back to the postseason and under new quarterback Nick Foles. Only 2 interceptions the entire season and a fantastic finish for Philadelphia. The Eagles 10-6 and another playoff berth.
Yes, and Nick, the only reason why this team really just struggled in 2013, they only had a 10-6 record. It could have been a lot better, maybe even a 12-4 record, you can arguably say. They had Michael Vick start, and Nick Foles and Matt Barkley start, 3 different quarterbacks during that 16 weeks, and they had Michael Vick go week 1 through 4, and they went 1-3 they went 1-3 during weeks 1 through 4, and then they go week 5 and 6. They go 2-0, and they beat New York and Tampa Bay. But then when you put in a Matt Barkley, and he had to go in for Nick Foles and Michael Vick that both got injured, and he's 0-2 in his career now. He lost to Dallas and New York. But then when you bring back Nick Foles, he only had 1 loss from week 9 to week 17, and it was against Minnesota. Nick, I gotta say, the Philadelphia Eagles, I think this team is gonna be a good team to look out for. And they did some things in the offseason that a lot of people are really eyeing about. And their 2013 draft class is pretty damn impressive. Struggled in the beginning, but came back strong when Nick Foles went on a tear by winning. He won 5 games in a row. But he went 7-1 weeks 9 through 17.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess one thing that is a cause for concern is that with Nick Foles having such a fantastic season, at least statistically, the Eagles, I guess you could say on paper, got a little bit worse on the offensive side of the football, mainly because of the production that you're not going to have anymore out of a Deshaun Jackson, who moves over to the Washington Redskins. Was this still a good decision by the Eagles? Because, mind you, they did have some other good transactions on the offensive side that may compensate. Do you think that it's too much to overcome? Sorry.
Coming off a torn ACL. Then you get Riley Cooper, who really stepped up, and I think really connected with Nick Foles over this past season. And, you know, Nick, it's going to be hard what this team has to do to come back, but their draft class, they did pick up a Jordan Matthews, a wide receiver out of Vanderbilt, and I think this guy will make a huge impact. But they also have Zach Ertz, and they did get a Darren Sproles. Darren Sproles is a guy that can catch the football, and he can run it down the field. But let's not forget LaShawn McCoy can catch them as well, and he has speed. Do not forget LaShawn McCoy is, I believe, well, I like Adrian Peterson, but I still believe LaShawn McCoy is the better running back in this league. He is potentially the best just because of the speed and the moves he can make downfield. But remember, that O-line really helped him out as well, especially on the right side.
Yeah, obviously that offensive line is a strength for the Philadelphia Eagles, but a couple things. First of all, I am a little concerned, or at least, basically this is an extreme worry here for the Eagles in that they lose a viable portion of the offense, one of the best statistical performers there for the Eagles in a Deshaun Jackson. And I go to ESPN and NFL Network, and a lot of what they say is that you're going to get the same production out of a guy by the name of Darren Sproles, who's now 31 years old. They're comparing one of the better receivers in the game today to a guy who's basically a receiving threat as a running back at 31. Deshaun Jackson, he was 26 when they let go of him, and he's now going to be 27. I think Philadelphia takes a step back because of that, because of the inability to keep Deshaun Jackson, given that his character issues were a cause for concern. Still, this guy wasn't even close to a contract year, and also to add insult to injury here, they're going to have no Lane Johnson for the first 4 games of the season. He was suspended with the NFL policy for PEDs. And just overall, you look at some of the transactions, and I mean, mind you, you do have some. I don't think the Eagles addressed everything that they needed to during the offseason, just in my opinion.
I still think the D-line is probably the weakest point for this squad, but remember, again, this was the worst defense against the pass, and I think they really changed that this season, especially acquiring some corners. But Nick, the Philadelphia Eagles, the linebacking core is not that bad. The defensive line is a big bit of concern. Their secondary, I gotta say, the safety position, they put a lot of pressure on a lot of pressure on Earl Wolf, and he was a 5th round pick, the 2013 draft. Remember, a 5th round pick? Why would you start a 5th round pick? And that was a big concern for me. But Earl Wolf. I mean, I hope Earl Wolf can maybe have a better season, but I still think he's going to struggle again. And I think this was a project for the Philadelphia Eagles and that D-line. I'm surprised they didn't really do much on that D-line because they did not get a ton of sacks. I mean, they don't really have a Robert Quinn. They don't really have that type. Well, of course, Robert Quinn's a freaking beast, but they don't have those guys. They don't really have a guy that can just go out and just get the quarterback. I mean, the quarterback has all the time in the world, and that's why the cornerbacks have to work so hard. But, I mean, the D-line, it really has to just get the job done.
Yeah, obviously, I think the defense was a weak point in a Philadelphia team that ranked towards the bottom of the league overall in defensive production. And the only time they basically didn't even address the defensive line until the 7th round. They took a Bayo Allen at defensive end from formerly he's been tossed around the league, and he was selected after Wisconsin there for the Eagles. I think overall you still have a weakness there in the defensive line, and then, I mean, you can't rely on subpar linebacking support for basically any while longer. I mean, is this defense ready to take this team back to the playoffs? Because, I mean, if we notice anything from the Seahawks Super Bowl victory, the defense gets you a long way.
And that is true. And I look at Denver. Well, the AFC was known as offense, and the NFC is known as defense. And I think this year it's going to change with the Patriots. But I mean, going to Philadelphia, the best player that could get the player that got the most sacks for them was Trent Cole, who had 8 sacks. But Michael Kendricks, he had 106 tackles, and you go to Demeco Ryans, and he had 127 tackles. So that's a good 1-2 punch for you. But Nick, here this D-line, you have Fletcher Cox, only had 41. He had 41 tackles, 3 sacks, and you have a Benny Logan, who only had 2 sacks and 27 tackles. Then you have your Cedric Thornton, and only had 1 sack. They're good against the rush, but I mean, against the pass, I mean, the quarterback has all the time in the world to just stand back there and make some great plays. And that's still going to be an issue for them, Nick. And I really don't see. I mean, I see this defense maybe being a little bit better, but the offense, Nick, maybe they took a step back with Deshaun Jackson, but still, a lot of people say Jordan Matthews is a big time target for Nick Foles, and he'll get I think he's going to get a lot of playing time. But Jeremy Maclin, he's a guy coming off a torn ACL. I can see that you can have some concern with that. And a lot of people coming off torn ACLs maybe won't have maybe won't have a great season, but an okay type of season. Riley Cooper could be the main target this year.
He could. I mean, the off-the-field issues are a touch concerning, but I do think that the Eagles do not have a bad receiving core, even without Deshaun Jackson. I'm just saying with the defense being as questionable as it is, I think you do have to continue to develop that side of the football, bring the talent back, and hope that eventually your drafting can help save you on the defensive side of the football. They did draft a guy in the first round, a linebacker, to maybe come in, a Marcus Smith, that they took basically what many call to be one of the worst decisions that the Eagles have made, at least based off of a number of mock drafts. They didn't have him until the second or third round. They take a Marcus Smith middle pack of the very first round. And I mean, based off of what you know, what you've seen on film, Robert, do you think this was a good draft pick to address the poor defensive situation?
I mean, Marcus Smith, yes, everyone has been saying this could be a potential bust for the Philadelphia Eagles. He could be potentially a project, and I don't think this was a smart pick, just because if you're going to, this guy was supposed to be a second or third rounder, wouldn't you think you would want to go after maybe a better linebacker or even a corner or a safety? I mean, yes, like Malcolm Jenkins off the New Orleans Saints, but I still think Marcus Smith from Louisville, I mean, he's played competitively, don't get me wrong, but I still think they could have done a little bit better in that selection for the first round. Nick, who do you think they could have potentially gone? Do you think they should have gone in a corner? Or do you think linebacker was a main concern for the squad?
I think what you do is you take the best available on the defensive side, and I mean, call me a little bit biased, but I think that both the Broncos and the Chargers at least got themselves, maybe not a steal, but they have a safer selection, one. And two, they have themselves a real good situation at the cornerback position where the Broncos took a Bradley Roby and the Chargers take a Jason Verrett. That would secure a defensive that includes Bradley Fletcher, Kerry Williams, Brandon Boykin, those are your starting four cornerbacks, and they really could have done themselves some favors if they were to address that cornerback situation. I mean, we mentioned some of the worst defenses that we've seen this season. Jacksonville did not look good at all. Obviously, the Dallas Cowboys, their defensive situation's anemic, but the worst passing defense statistically in the league was the Philadelphia Eagles. They, based off of 2013 stats, they give up nearly 300 yards every game through the air on average, which is absolutely below their expectations. Chip Kelly, amazing offense, but that defense has to get a little bit better, and they need some production out of Marcus Smith because that cornerback situation does not look all that good either.
You look at the defense and you see the interceptions they had this season, and they had 19. I mean, that's not. I mean, it's one of the low ends, but still, when you get 19 interceptions, it's kind of mid of the pack. Brandon Boykin had 6 of those. So, I mean, I see this squad. I think their cornerback position is a concern, yes, but I think what they did with the defense is they kind of used it more against the rush, and you could probably tell because, man, statistically they did awful, and they were 10th against the rush, so you can at least give them that because they did get a team that can really step up the running game, but nothing against the passing. And that they really don't have that type of balance. They're lean towards more against the rush than the pass. And I think the Eagles should have maybe done a little bit more balancing out during the off season.
Yeah, obviously this is a team that relies on its offense, but let me just read to you. And second of all, I'm looking at the turnover differential, and I don't know if you can depend on the Eagles being plus 12 turnover ratio during the season. I don't know if you can expect them to do that again. And they went only 10-6. I mean, based off of those statistics, they should have been a whole lot better than 10-6. But of the playoff teams, you talk about Seattle in the NFC, San Francisco, Carolina, obviously the New Orleans Saints made it in the NFC playoffs, the San Francisco 49ers, and then the Green Bay Packers. All of which, except for maybe Green Bay, has a great defense. I think the Packers, they don't necessarily have their defensive situation intact, but Carolina, San Francisco, New Orleans has been a real solid defense, and they're going to get even better. And then obviously the Seattle Seahawks and San Francisco 49ers, if I didn't already mention. So those NFC teams that are in the playoffs all have great defenses, and we've taken a look at some of the other great teams that have a shot to make it this year, good defenses, which is a huge cause for concern. And when you take a look statistically, I mean, nothing flashes at you other than a solid year out of D'Amico Ryans, which may have been the reason why they ranked top 10 in rushing defense, but I mean, overall, I just am not overly impressed with this Eagles defense, even with some of the draft picks that they got, and they did keep their talent intact. But mind you, a talent that ranked last against the pass.
Yes, but the quarterback position, they can't get interceptions. It's not like that's a big deal. Brandon Boykin got 6, Kerry Williams got 3, Bradley Fetcher got 2 interceptions, Nolan Carroll got 3, and there's a lot of interceptions from that cornerback position. I just feel like, they just come up and, like looking at the just interception rate, it doesn't look that bad, Nick, but just watching film, they just didn't know what to do. I mean, against the number 1 guys in the wide receiver corps, they had to try to double team, do anything. That seemed to not work at all when you go against some tough teams in your 2013 schedule. I mean, you went against San Diego, who had a pretty tough wide receiver corps, and they came back after loss to the Houston Texans. You go to Kansas City, that you pretty much got ran over by Jamal Charles. And, of course, you're going to lose to the Denver Broncos when Peyton Manning's your quarterback. They lost to the Dallas Cowboys, but that's under a Matt. Nick, okay, I understand that maybe this differential is a concern, but remember they had to use 3 different quarterbacks this season. They really didn't find the mojo until week 9. And I think he made it official about week 10, week 11, but still, let's just remember at the end of the season, the most points the defense gave up was 22, but then they really, I'm looking at it, and they didn't really give up single digits either. I mean, their defense isn't all that special. They give up a ton of points. So that's been a big concern. And, Nick, I really want to see the squad, I really just want to see the squad get better on D, but I don't see it happening just yet.
Yeah, I don't see it. I mean, I don't know if the Louisville Marcus Smith, again, I don't know if he's exactly the answer. I'm taking a look at the schedule here, and Philadelphia has actually had some relatively impressive wins. They defeated the Chicago Bears, mind you, it was at home, but a 54-11 shellacking in Week 16. Some other big impressive victories were when the Eagles defeated Green Bay in Lambeau Field 27-13. That kept their playoff hopes alive. And then a 49-20 victory over the Raiders where Foles threw for 7 passing touchdowns. I mean, Philadelphia got off to a real slow start. They really crawled out of the gate, but then they got things going and came within a last-second field goal of moving on to the divisional round after a loss to the New Orleans Saints. I think maybe this team you could expect to be right around where they were last year. Statistically, I think may have been a little too much in the favor of Philadelphia, the plus 12 turnover. I'm just never a guy that thinks based off of the quarterback that you have, Nick Foles, based off of the receiver that you lost in Deshaun Jackson, and the fact that you didn't improve on the defensive end. And in my books, if you struggle at one side of the football and you don't improve at all over the offseason in somewhat of a dramatic fashion, then you're going backwards. And in a division like the NFC East, when you talk about the Redskins, that we expect both Robert and I to have a winning record, the Dallas Cowboys should at least be formidable, and then the New York Giants, listen, that is not a team to sleep on. We have had discussions on, if Eli Manning can go 7-9 by leading the league in picks, what do you think he can do if he turns that thing around, which he has in years past? the Philadelphia Eagles should be really concerned. We're going to wrap up the NFC East tonight and figure out who's going to win this division. And in my mind, Philadelphia is not as safe of an answer as everyone thinks.
Oh, wow. Well, you got your own opinion, but Nick, okay, you talk about Dallas. They have had close games. The first meeting, well, they played Matt Barkley, and it was 17-3. That was awful. Then at week 17, Dallas gave a run for their money, 24-22. That's a close game, and I still think...
Kyle Orton was the quarterback, by the way, not Tony Romo.
Yeah, Tony Romo's not the quarterback. I think maybe Tony Romo is the quarterback in that situation. I still think this squad has a shot, and, you know, looking at their division, New York, they lost, they split, and I feel like this squad just split a lot. I mean, Washington, they went 2-0 against, but remember Washington maybe got a little bit better. I mean, we still haven't covered them yet. We did cover them, right?
The New York Giants, we thought, based off of our standings, I'll go ahead and bring this out to you. I'm going to find this, but I already kind of remember. All right, so in the NFC East, we never predicted the Cowboys, but both Robert and I think that the Dallas Cowboys may struggle this year to even get to 8-8. That might even be a struggle. But based off of my predictions, the Giants and the Redskins both go 9-7, and New York edges Washington based off of tiebreakers. In Robert's prediction, the Giants go 9-7 and do have the winning record over the Redskins, who are 8-8. So it all comes down to if the Eagles can win 10 games again. And looking at the schedule, it's about week 16 and 17 when they got to do it. Week 16, it's the Eagles at the Giants. Redskins, then week 17 at the Giants. So the last 2 weeks will be oh so telling, and I mean, this should be fun to watch how the schedule pans out.
It's not even an easy schedule here at Indianapolis versus Washington and San Francisco. You're going against the NFC West, Nick. That's not fun to be at. I mean, the NFC West is tough. Their defense is known, but Philadelphia, it's going to be interesting to see what they could do against the NFC West, and also to see what they do against the NFC East. They do play Jacksonville, they play Houston, they play Carolina, Green Bay.
But the key games are going to be Week 4 at San Francisco, obviously the Week 2 game at the Colts, but then following the bye, how do they respond? Because they may not have the record they would like. It's 2 road games before they take on the Carolina Panthers. No slouch in their own right. And then later on in the season, it's games against the world champion Seahawks, at the Packers, and then 3 road games against your NFC East foes, Cowboys, Redskins, Giants. All of them are on the road. That is brutal. So Philadelphia, I mean, maybe their schedule isn't the worst because they do play some real good or real easy opponents, but it's no slouch, and that will be definitely a challenge for a team trying to repeat as NFC East champs.
But Nick, I think actually the Philadelphia Eagles have a good shot of actually maybe beating Seattle, just because yes, the offense is struggling. The offense, of course, could struggle a little bit, but their defense actually stacks well. If they can just stop Marshawn Lynch throughout pretty much the whole game, they don't really have much of a passing game. I mean, Golden Tate's gone, Sidney Rice retired. I mean, what's that wide receiver core now for the Seattle Seahawks?
That's true. Obviously, if Philadelphia were to play Seattle, they would have at least somewhat of an edge in the running game, because this is the top-ranked rushing attack in the NFL last year, and you can expect LaShawn McCoy to even do bigger and better things. And Seattle isn't necessarily as dominant as they were a year ago. They let some key pieces leave in the free agency market, but overall, Philadelphia, I mean, if there is one thing that they can hang their hat on, it's offensive consistency. And Chip Kelly, I mean, mind you, he still is trying to develop and trying to get his very first playoff win, but this is a for-real coach. I mean, the Eagles are very lucky to move on from the Andy Reid regime and have a real good backup option in a Chip Kelly, who now many people know he's no backup option. He's a guy that can come in and lead his team to big-time victories like they did last year.
And I look at what Chip Kelly's done to this squad and the offense. He really improved that offense. The defense, though, they could have done something. They could have maybe improved it a little bit. They could have improved it a lot better. I mean, the linebacking core is probably the strongest point. And Nick, it's going to be a big concern. But when we head on to that depth chart, we're going to see about the grades and see what happens. I think I see the Philadelphia Eagles. I think this team is going to be first place in my mind, just because yes, they're going to be split some games, but I still think the Philadelphia Eagles they get hot towards the end. I think that's what's going to happen this season.
All right, before we get going, though, here, obviously Philadelphia, interesting NFC East situation, but who's your under-the-radar performance for Philadelphia this year?
Under the radar, man, I got to say, I think it's Zach Ertz coming out. I mean, he's coming into his second year. No one really knew about him. Some guys relate him as a Greg Olsen type of player. And I think he's just going to keep on getting better and better. He had 36 receptions for 469 yards and had 4 touchdowns. I think this guy's going to do a lot better. I mean, their tight end position is actually pretty strong when they have a Brett Seelick and a Zach Ertz. But I think Zach Ertz coming into his second season could be a potential under-the-radar type of player.
Obviously, love the production out of a Zach Ertz freshman year coming out. But I also love another guy who should perform very well as a rookie, and that is Jordan Matthews. Gotta love the draft pick that the Eagles got for him. I mean, he was a mid-round draft pick and should pay huge dividends for them. And, I mean, one player that basically will help their cause in all sorts of ways is a Nick Foles, who comes back for the Eagles as the unquestioned starting quarterback. And boy, it's been quite some time since Philadelphia's had themselves a viable situation. They've been with the Michael Vick experiment for quite some time. Obviously, Donovan McNabb was great for them, but towards the end of his career, he was a problem as well, and he was thought of as a potential backup to a Michael Vick when he came in from the Atlanta Falcons and all the situation there. Now you have Foles and Mark Sanchez as the two quarterbacks, throwing a Matt Barkley, and you have a couple guys who, I mean, former Trojans themselves. I think the Eagles have a real good situation at QB.
Nick, what's your grade for the QB?
Yeah, I give them a B+.
I have to agree with you. I was actually going to think of B+. I want to see Nick Foles play all 16 games this season. I don't want all these injuries, and I don't want to see 3 quarterbacks start this season. I want to see Nick Foles be consistent. Mark Sanchez may come in once in a while if Nick Foles maybe has a small injury. Comes back in. Matt Barkley, I don't want to see him take a snap this season because he was 0-2 and really didn't do anything with the offense. Give him a B+. I mean, they do have, I think Mark Sanchez is a solid backup. I mean, no one wants to really remember him for the butt fumble, but when you have 27 touchdowns for 2 interceptions from Nick Foles, his stats could potentially get 40 touchdowns this season.
Yeah, obviously statistics aren't exactly as impressive as winning games, and Nick Foles did a whole lot of that when he came in during the middle portion of the year. And what really helps is to have one of the better running backs of all time, and I think I can already agree what your grade is going to be. But the backups, first and foremost, they let go of some key pieces. I believe one of them went over to San Francisco, but they bring over a Darren Sproles as a backup running back and a Chris Polk who should provide some key backup options for the Eagles. I mean, I give the situation an A+ because anything less doesn't pay their dues for the number 1 running attack last season.
So Bryce Brown actually left the squad, and where did he go? I heard his name before. It's not the 49ers. But either way, Sean McCoy, Darren Sproles, you have a wide receiver type of running back. And you have a guy that can just run this football like crazy. A+. I love LaShawn McCoy. To be honest with you, Nick, this is actually probably my favorite running back of all time so far in the NFL. And I think this guy keeps on getting better and better. His speed is magnificent. and he can really just, and his moves, and he can just really just break through some tackles. So Nick, Sean McCoy is going to be the best running back this season.
Huge expectations for a guy who basically expects the same out of himself. I mean, I'm pretty sure I heard a report that he expects a 2,000-yard campaign. LaShawn McCoy expects that out of himself. Fantastic situation there for Philadelphia. Wide receiver, not exactly as dominant. You have Jeremy Maclin and Riley Cooper. Obviously, Maclin coming off the injury. And and at least I expect Jordan Matthews to come into the fold as the number 3 target. You have Brad Smith as well. And they no longer have Aurelius Ben, which is a real problem for them. But, I mean, in any way, I think the Eagles have a solid situation, but not something to be flattered about. But I do love Jeremy Maclin. I mean, I expect him to come off an injury and play very well. I give this wide receiver core a B-.
A-. You're not really expecting much out of Jordan Matthews. I'm a little disappointed. Jordan Matthews was their best pick in this draft, and I think Jordan Matthews comes up and has a big impact. But the one guy that they drafted also was a Josh Huff. Probably potentially could have been one of the worst picks. I think they could have maybe gotten a better pick instead of a Josh Huff. But Riley Cooper, I think, steps up this season. He's going to have over 47 receptions this season, could potentially be an 1,000-yard guy. But I think it's going to be Jeremy Maclin. I think he's just going to be back into the fold of things. But he's supposed to be at full speed at training camp. He's feeling fine right now. I'll give him a B. I think this is going to be a consistent wide receiver core. But remember, we know Nick Foles in 27 touchdowns for 2 interceptions. I understand you have Deshaun Jackson, but I still think that when you have Zach Ertz and Brett Seelick as well, and you have a Darren Sproles who can catch this football, I think Nick Foles has a ton of weapons around him that he'll take advantage of.
Yeah, and another situation that pays huge dividends for them is the tight end spot. You have and also a guy who can play some fullback too, a James Casey. But the 2 starters and guys that should provide some huge statistics, Brent Selleck and Zach Ertz are on the roster, and I mean, I don't think anything other than a B+ pays their dues, because this tight end spot is pretty dang good and was part of the reason why you have Nick Foles throwing 27 touchdown passes.
I mean, Nick, these guys pretty much combined for like 900 yards of receiving. Not too bad. And I really like Zach Ertz. I've been watching him. I love Stanford football, and Zach Ertz was one of the players I've been watching when I was kind of in my childhood, and now just because he was a rookie last year. But yeah, I watched him play a couple of games, and he's a fantastic player. He can catch the ball, he can block, and 36 receptions for 469 yards. I gotta admit, that's a pretty good impressive rookie season for Zach Ertz. And Brett Seelick, I think these two are a dynamic duo for the tight end position. Give him a B+.
Great situation there. I love what the Eagles have at the offensive line. Their penciled-in starters right now are Jason Peters, obviously a huge mammoth left tackle. Then you have Evan Mathis, Jason Kelsey, Todd Hermans, and Alan Barbre. And outside of the right tackle, I think every one of those guys have at least been to a couple Pro Bowls, which is fantastic. I mean, that's very unheard of to have an offensive line where close to every player has been to multiple Pro Bowls. I mean, that's a great situation for the Eagles to have. They signed an Andrew Gardner from the Houston Texans, and they also drafted a Josh Andrews, and should provide some huge production. Matt Tobin's the backup at left tackle as well. They have some key pieces. I give this unit an A.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you on the spot. Did you know that Lane Johnson, 2013 draft pick, he started out slow, but did you know that he is the 5th rated run blocking tackle in all of football?
Yeah, and it's going to be great towards the end of the year to have him back in the lineup. Suspended the first 4 games, but still a dynamic player. And I think over the last few years, the draft has given the NFL some great tackles. In that same draft, you had Eric Fisher, you had Luke Joeckel, then Lane Johnson, and DJ Fluker, 4 starting tackles in the top 10 of the NFL draft. I mean, 2012, I believe, was when they were selected. An amazing NFL draft for these guys. Or, 2013 draft.
I gotta admit, I love Lane Johnson for this squad. I mean, yeah, he got suspended, but this guy's had just some positive grades. He's come back off kind of a slow type of season, allowing a lot of people to just go fly by. And gets Michael Vick and Matt Barkley and Nick Foles, all those 3 guys. But towards the end of the season, he found his groove, and this is a cornerstone for Philadelphia. Getting a Lane Johnson, I give him an A, because this O-line is, I think, one of the best, and it gives Nick Foles a ton of time to throw that football, and it helps out LaShawn McCoy bust out a lot of yards.
Unfortunately, though, Robert, that defensive line, I think, is doing the same thing for opposing quarterbacks. Cedric Thornton, Bernie Logan, and Fletcher Cox are the penciled-in starters right now. They do have some backups. Bayo Allen, they drafted in the 7th round, but, I mean, I think this defensive line needs some serious retooling. I give this defensive front about a C, and, I mean, that may be a little bit harsh, but I just don't expect a whole lot out of a unit that gave up a lot of yards via both the air and on the ground. They were bottom 10 overall.
Well, if you're going to hear my grade, Nick, I mean, it's even worse. I think it's got to be a D+. It's probably the worst grade I've given is a D+ so far, but this squad needs to rebuild, period. I mean, they can't get really that much sacks. Yes, you can stop the running game. Congratulations. You did that. Do something else. At least use a left defensive end or right defensive end to get some pass rush going. They didn't do that this year. I'm disappointed in Philadelphia. I think D+ is not that harsh, to be honest with you, Nick. They got to rebuild that unit.
And luckily for them, they do have a linebacking core that I love. A guy that has been under the radar for his entire career and still is so in Philadelphia is Connor Barwin, former Houston Texan. Obviously behind him is the rookie Marcus Smith. I mean, I don't expect much out of him. Nevertheless, the other guys include a Mike Hall Kendricks, D'Amico Ryans, and Trent Cole. Love the defensive linebacking core for these Eagles. And, I mean, no further explanation needed for me. I'm going to give them a B+. Very formidable linebacking core for them.
I'm not through with you. I was actually going to give them a B+ too. I like Michael Kendricks and D'Amico Ryans. They're kind of that dynamic duo. They're kind of that 1-2 punch. And Trent Cole is the guy that gets to the quarterback. Has 8 sacks last season, but then when you go to Connor Barwin, had 5 sacks, 59 tackles, and an interception. I think he's just going to keep on getting better and better. This O-line is probably the strongest point on this squad.
A B+ for sure. A B+ for the strongest point on the defensive side of the football. Cornerback, not so much. You do have Bradley Fletcher and Gary Williams, former Raven, in there. Nolan Carroll from the Dolphins that comes over and is basically going to be expected to have some key playing time, him along with Brandon Boykin. And, I mean, I don't know what your take is on these corners, but it's not all that impressive. I'm going to give them a C+. I mean, they weren't terrible. They didn't have great interception statistics, but I don't expect them to repeat that mark. I mean, it's similar to the quarterback. I don't believe that they're going to have that great of a year statistically. I give this unit overall, talent-wise, about a C+.
They need to rebuild. I mean, Brandon Boykin, 6 interceptions. You got Gary Williams at 3, Brandon Fletcher at 2. You got Nate Carroll. I think that was a good pickup. But besides that, Nick, this squad really should have done more in the cornerback position. And he's so far, I mean, this guy isn't the best free agent pickup. I think when you go to the safety position, it's got to be Malcolm Jenkins.
Malcolm Jenkins, huge acquisition from the New Orleans Saints. They do have a Nate Allen and a Chris Maragos from the Seattle Seahawks as well. Ed Reynolds, a guy that they drafted this season. Overall, this safety unit is actually something that they can depend on. I'm going to give this crew a B, a solid grade for them.
I think they're consistent. And Malcolm Jenkins, yes, he's trying to get old, but still, I think he can make an impact. But Earl Wolf, big concern. He was already in the prime in the middle of the season. He gets hurt, and that's a big concern for me because when you get hurt, your career could pretty much die down. Earl Wolf could have that bust this season. He needs to stay healthy. I give this unit a B-.
Are you seriously eating right now?
How'd you know?
Dang, well, defense is going to be eating up on that Eagles secondary. Just not exactly a strength for them. The offensive side of the football gets a B+, and that ranks among the best in the league. We haven't given out any A- to any unit because it's almost impossible to sit there and figure out a way. And maybe if Deshaun Jackson is in-house, maybe they get an A-, but that would have been almost impossible to figure out the salary situation off of that. But the defense does receive a B-, which is far below their offensive production because of the situation at the defensive line, and their cornerbacks aren't all that great. Special teams, you got Donnie Jones and Alex Henry kicking and punting for this football team, and then the returnmen, it's not a Deshaun Jackson, it's a Damaris Johnson and Brandon Boykin. I give that special teams unit a B-, because I do love what Donnie Jones brings to the table, and coaching staff, they did a fantastic job and should do that again. Chip Kelly, the head coach, Pat Shurmur, and Billy Davis. Those are the coordinators for this Philadelphia Eagles squad. I'm going to give the coaching staff an A-.
I give the coaching staff an A- too. They're working with a unit that's strong in the offense, but not as strong as the defense, and I think something they need to work on. But to be honest, the best free agent acquisition for the Philadelphia Eagles could potentially, second best is Donnie Jones. I think Donnie Jones is a good pickup, nevertheless. And I really like how Donnie Jones came in, and I really like how Donnie Jones signed with the Philadelphia Eagles, and I think he'll make an impact. As long as punt was 70, he averages a 44.9. Not too bad, and Nick. But I gotta say, if we're gonna be grading, I think MVP of this squad goes to LaShawn McCoy. He's just gonna keep on getting better and better every year. Under the radar is gonna be Zach Ertz, and my best free agent acquisition is Malcolm Jenkins.
Malcolm Jenkins, not Darren Sproles.
Well, the defensive side is struggling more, and I like the Malcolm Jenkins pickup because I think it's going to help you. I think it's going to contribute more on the defensive side. I understand, yes, you get Darren Sproles, but this team's already I still think this team's stacked on offense. You got Jordan Matthews, you get Brett Seelig, you still have Zach Ertz, Riley Cooper, Jerry Maclin's coming back to torn ACL. I think Jerry Maclin is going to stay healthy all season. Yes, I like Darren Sproles. I think you could potentially say he was the second or third best, too, with Donnie Jones, but I think Malcolm Jenkins was the number one need for them. I think it was the best pickup for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, definitely going to be a solid offense this coming season. Fun to watch. A lot of points are going to be put up there for Philadelphia. But will it be enough to repeat as NFC East champions? We're going to go ahead and cue the music and get started with the NFL season prediction. Actually, give us just a matter of moments. We're looking up the music at the meantime. But, just as a segue, Robert, thoughts before the NFL schedule release right here? Because, listen, partner, this should be a fun to watch and basically season that comes down to the wire for Philadelphia.
Well, they got a tough schedule this year, not going to lie. They go against some tough teams, especially on the defensive side. Nick Foles is going to have to play some really good offense to win a couple of those games. The defense, cornerback position is going to struggle, but I think Malcolm Jenkins is really going to help them out. And then when you look at the D-line is going to struggle. Linebacking core and safeties are really going to help out the defensive side, but nevertheless, when you have two running backs that are in Darren Sproles and LaShawn McCoy, that's a pretty solid duo. Nick Foles, captain of the squad, and then you go to Riley Cooper, Jerry Maclin, Jordan Matthews. I think those three are going to make an impact, and then Zach Ertz and Brett Seelig, dynamic duo in the tight end position. Those two are going to be making a ton of catches. I think they're going to combine for at least 1,100 yards this year in receiving.
Predictions galore out of Robert Dieters. But we're going to go ahead and get started here, and it's NFL season schedule time. We're going to predict game by game what exactly to expect for these coming Philadelphia Eagles. And we're going to go ahead and get started with the Week 1 contest at home against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And in my opinion, it's a 1-0 start for Philadelphia.
Of course it's a 1-0 start. Against Jacksonville, it's an easy win, and Nick Foles is just going to pass all over them.
Week 2, it's on the road to take on the Indianapolis Colts. I gave the Eagles a loss because the Colts played very well against the Philadelphia team, and it's going to be in Indianapolis. Meanwhile, it's Robert that gives the Eagles a win on the road. Week 3, home against the Redskins. It's the homecoming for Deshaun Jackson facing his former team. We both give the Eagles the win. So in week number 4, it's a road trip to San Francisco, and basically, to Robert's surprise, I'm going to give the Eagles the loss. I think the Niners figure out a way to get it done at home there in the new stadium, and the Eagles fall for the second time this season.
Finally, someone doesn't bash on the 49ers. I'm going to give them the win, too, because I think the 49ers just stack very well offensively. I think when you have Patrick Willis, Holden Smith, and Ahmad Brooks, and that linebacking core against Sean McCoy, and that D-line is pretty solid for the 49ers to give them a win.
It's a 2-game homestand for the Eagles following that game, and I give the Eagles 2 straight wins. It's home against the Rams, then home against the Giants. Meanwhile, Robert, he gives the Eagles a loss to St. Louis before coming back with a W against the New York Giants. Then in week number 7, it's a bye before week 8. It begins a 2-game road trip, first against the Arizona Cardinals. We both give the Eagles the win, and it sets up a week 9 game on the road against the Houston Texans. I give the Eagles, I'm tossing and turning on this one, but I do give Philadelphia the win. They have a little too much firepower to fall that late in the season following a bye to Houston.
And Nick, also, you look at their O-line, we give them an A. The D-line is going to fight back with Davion Clowney and J.J. Watt, but I still think the offense gets the job done in this situation. And the defense, I think, is going to stop the Houston Texans. They don't have much going. They have Arian Foster can make an impact, but still, I think Philly is next.
Actually, I'm looking at what's going on with Houston, and I actually think that Houston has a very, very interesting schedule. Basically, they have a relatively easy road to take to Houston before they face off against the Eagles. And I don't know if this actually has never happened here for NFL team breakdowns, but I'm going to change my prediction. And I'm going to give the Eagles a loss on the road against the Houston Texans. Surprise of the season. I'm sorry, but I've been tossing and turning on this one, and I'm going to give the Eagles the loss. I'm coming into that game, and maybe we'll go into more to this later, but the Texans have a very easy schedule, and they face the Eagles at home after playing the Titans the week before. Then following that, they'll have a bye week, and they'll have time to rest following that game. I think it may be just a little bit too much, though we may go into this afterwards. Week number 11, week 10 and 11, I give the Eagles back-to-back losses. Meanwhile, Robert gives them a loss week 10 against the Panthers. Then week 11 at the Packers, he gives the Eagles the win. So in week 12, I give the Eagles the W. It's at home against Tennessee.
Oh, did I give them the win too?
Yes. Yes, it's 2 straight wins for them. So in week 13 on the road against the Dallas Cowboys, and I think the Eagles have a real good last-second push towards the playoffs. They get a W on the road, albeit, against the Dallas Cowboys.
This is a toss and turn, Nick, but I gotta give them a loss. I think this team will pull one out against Philadelphia, and it has to be at their home stadium. I'll give Dallas the win.
Huge win for them. Obviously, the Cowboys played the Eagles very tough. They nearly beat them in Dallas last year. Week 14, it's a 2-game home stand for the Eagles. First off, they take on the world champion Seattle Seahawks, and I think we can all agree that it may be a little too much for a team right now to overtake the best in the NFL. I'm going to give the Eagles the loss.
I'm going to give them the loss too. I think Seattle. I did talk about Seattle. Maybe they have a plan, but I think Seattle will somehow get the job done and beat Philadelphia. Then we go to versus Dallas. I think they get the win. They get the revenge from Dallas, and they split the series 1-1.
Interesting scenario for them. Yes, week 15, it's home against the Dallas Cowboys, and I mean, based off of what you just said, it's a win for them. So in week 16 and week 17, it's already solidified what exactly we predicted. Week 16, on the road against the Redskins, I give them the win. Meanwhile, Robert gives them the loss. Then in week 17, it's on the road again to take on the Giants in the final game of the year, and I give the Eagles the loss. Meanwhile, Robert, he gives Philadelphia the W, which means that I believe the Philadelphia Eagles conclude the season winning 2 of their last 3 games and finish at 9-7. Meanwhile, Robert Dieters, after a 3-0 start, the Eagles struggle before the bye, losing 2, and then they come back with a vengeance and end up only losing 5 games, which puts them at 11. They lose 6 games, which puts them at 10-6 on the season. And your back-to-back NFC East champions are the Philadelphia Eagles in your estimations. Does that sound about right for you?
That does sound about right for me. I think I did say 10-6, and the reason why I think this team is about the same, but I mean they did add Darren Sproles, they lose Deshaun Jackson. So what? They pretty much add another, a threat in the wide receiver core. I think McCoy and Sproles could be a threat in the wide receiver position, but I gotta say, Nick, I think 10-6 is just where they're gonna be at.
Yeah, it's obviously interesting here. So, based off of my predictions, the Redskins, the Giants, and the Eagles, they all finished 9-7. All 3 of those teams. So I got to figure out tiebreakers. Obviously, New York Giants, they have the tiebreaker over the Redskins based off of the wins and losses that I gave them. But I'm going to have to go through it and figure out who wins the NFC East. But nevertheless, based off of the predictions that we have, the Eagles may not even, if they don't win the division, they may not even be in the running for the playoffs. I mean, in this tough NFC, you gotta win at least 10 games to have a secure spot in the postseason. You talk about the Niners being wild card potential, the Panthers as well. Both of us have them winning 10 games this next season, and Atlanta is not going to be 4-12 again. You got to believe that they'll be in the push for the playoffs, and I mean, Philadelphia, maybe not a defense that we like, but the offense is still one of the best in the NFL, and I think we can both agree that Nick Foles can come back and have a good season behind a great running back, behind a solid offensive line, and a receiving threat that we actually like with the Zach Ertz, Brent Selleck, Jordan Matthews in the mix as well. And I mean, I didn't mention this during the depth chart discussion, but I'm not the biggest fan, and the only player that I don't like on the offensive side is a Riley Cooper. I think he may be a little bit overrated, but he still was a guy with some solid production last season, albeit with controversy as well. I mean, basically, I don't know if there's really any other question for an Eagles team that is pretty darn good.
Yeah, Nick, their offense is very strong. Everyone can agree with that. The defense is the struggle, and it's sad that their defense has to be so poor, and especially in the NFC. I think that they're in the AFC, it would be a way different story. These guys could potentially get maybe 11 or 12 wins in the AFC, but here in the NFC, it's a lot different. And Nick, looking at the NFC West, I said they lose to San Francisco, St. Louis, and the Seattle Seahawks. So a very interesting fact there. They lose 3 out of 4 against the NFC West. The NFC West is a tough division, and I feel like Philadelphia offense isn't going to win you championships. It's the defense, and it's not. I don't think it's Philadelphia's year just yet, but they did find their franchise quarterback, which I am very impressed with that, and they found a star running back. I think they need some star defensive players in the next couple of years. But Nick, they don't have the next couple of years. I mean, Sean McCoy and Nick Foles, I mean, they have to be there for a while to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think it is going to be a couple years, and a couple years of good drafting, a couple years of solid free agent moves, and basically taking care of their due diligence. I don't know if Philadelphia is quite ready. I'm taking a look here at what exactly the Giants did via the schedule to see if they win the tiebreaker or not. And based off of the NFC East records, The Eagles, they go 2-0 against the Redskins. That officially bumped them. Even though they're 9-7, they win the playoffs because of their NFC East record. Win the NFC East. But even if they win the division, I make it a whole lot tougher than what Robert believes. He has them winning by an entire game over the Giants. Meanwhile, I only have them winning over tiebreakers. It still means that the NFC East, in the playoffs, I don't know if they match up against some of the tops in the NFL. And we'll get to the NFL playoff predictions as soon as we can get that to you. But, I think we've already gone way too much in depth against one of the worst defenses in the NFL. Does Philadelphia have a shot to even win a playoff game this year?
It's tough. To be honest, I think that's the question we'll be answering when we're going to be in LA, because LA is going to be our last show, and that's our playoff predictions. It's going to be really interesting, though. I think this team, I don't know. I think maybe the Saints are going to, I don't think this team has a shot. The defenses in the NFC are way too strong against the Philadelphia Eagles. You're in division, pretty much the Philadelphia Eagles are in a division where it can be tough. It's going to come down the wire, because I think 10-6, 9-7, 8-8. For three separate teams, it's going to be different. I think the NFC East is getting tougher and tougher. Maybe not in 11 or 12 win way, but 10-6, 9-7, 8-8. Could be pretty tough, but I think it's going to come down to those. It's going to come down to the Eagles, Giants, and what am I saying? Eagles, Giants, and the Redskins.
Yep.
And that's going to be tough. Those three teams are fighting for a spot. They're going to come out aggressive. The last couple of weeks, you got Dallas, Washington, and New York, week 15, 16, and 17, Nick. Last 3 weeks are your NFC East. It's tough. And I don't know, man. They can go 1-2, 2-1. I don't think they're going to get swept by those three, but...
Lost connect, or excuse me. Sorry about that. Yeah, we are back on air. Sorry for the delay, guys. We are going to wrap it up here on the NFL Team Breakdowns edition of the National Sports. But final thoughts out of a Robert Dieters, who basically, based off of the predictions, will go more in depth on this after we finish the standings here. But in the meantime, the Eagles, I'm trying to judge exactly how this would finish, and it looks like, based off of the predictions, the Eagles would most likely have the number 4 seed in the NFC. It would face the number 5 seeded Panthers. Eagles home against the Carolina Panthers. Intriguing matchup. Do you think Philadelphia matches up well against them and good enough for a win?
Well, if I have to go to final thoughts here, Carolina doesn't have a really strong wide receiver core. Something interesting to watch out for. They have an okay one. They did get a first round. They did get a wide receiver. Who was it Odell Beckham Jr.?
He's going to go to the Giants. They have Kelvin Benjamin.
They have Kelvin Benjamin, yes. Okay, Kelvin Benjamin is a player that's going to be a number 1 target, but when you lose Brandon LaFell, Ted Ginn, and Steve Smith, they're going to struggle in that department. But, they have Mike Tolbert and D'Angelo Williams that can run all over you. If Philadelphia Eagles defense against the rush can help you out, you'll be set. But Cam Newton is a smart quarterback. Something scary about him and Nick Foles are going to be going back at it. I think these teams, they're going to stack pretty well against each other. But the O-line for the Philadelphia Eagles either busts or they win the game for them. So, man, I got to say, if I got to give an early prediction now, I think Carolina is just the better team defensive-wise, and their defense is
A- for the defensive side of the football. Are under basically some of the better players that we had on the team, include Luke Kuechly, include some other great players for them. Their defensive line, we gave them a real solid grade. They do have a number of dominant players for the Carolina Panthers, including a guy who's coming back, Greg Hardy. That should be fascinating, coming up one of the better offensive lines that we've mentioned. He would be one-on-one against a Jason Peters and a Todd Harrimans there on the left side of the line. fascinating matchup if that's how it comes down, and that looks like that's exactly how, on both of our predictions, that's exactly how it ends up, which is fascinating given that both of these teams lost a lot in free agency at the wide receiver position. So it should be very interesting. Again, it's the Cincinnati Bengals coming up next time on NFL Team Breakdowns. We're down to the final few teams before we get ready for playoff predictions, MVP standings, and more. Yeah. All right, sorry for the delay. Thank you for listening to the National Sports.